I'm here at the European Development Days in Brussels, and with me is John Hendra, the Deputy Director General of UN Women. John, thank you very much for being here.
My pleasure, Rolf.
Tell me, 2 years into UN Women, where are we at? What is the status here? What are some of the successes we've seen so far?
I think, well, we're not quite yet 2 years, it'll be 2 years in January, but I think some of the successes we've seen are also some of the challenges. Some of the successes is advocacy globally. I think we're seeing much more attention to women's issues, to women's rights, to gender equality, women's empowerment. I think we've been able to develop a lot of partnerships. We have a fantastic mandate where we have a normative role, an operational role, and coordination role in the 3 pillars of the UN, so peace and security, development, and human rights. And we're seeing that the UN Women is very much at the table in some of these key discussions on peace and security, but then we get to the challenges. And the challenges are that women are not at the table. Women make peace in the communities and families, but it's men who sign peace agreements. So we have a long way to go, a lot of advocacy that we need to do to push for greater women's involvement. We have a challenge, certainly in the Middle East, but also in Afghanistan and Papua New Guinea, many countries around the world where actually women's rights are being clawed back and there's been a move backward. And also we have a big challenge in terms of some of the international discourse around sexual and reproductive rights. And we do still live in a world where globally only 14% of women are in the public and private sector in leadership positions, where there's still 600 million women around the world who live in countries that don't have laws that outlaw violence against women. We have another 600 million women around the world and very vulnerable in employment and very subject to harsh environmental conditions, that don't have the proper social protection. So the good news is that gender equality and women's empowerment is getting more attention. The issue is that there are real challenges, and so UN Women's role is to try to catalyze the UN system, but really to work in partnership in as effective way as possible to try and see some real tangible change for ultimately women and girls on the ground.
UN Women is not really a large agency, as I understand it, at least compared to some of the other UN institutions.
Yeah.
So money seems to not be what can help you make a difference. Is advocacy really enough? Is it really enough to present female leaders around the world, which I think is one of the strategies that you're using to present women in business, women in politics? Is that really enough?
It's not enough, and I think one of another success has been really focusing on empowerment and political empowerment in all its forms. So political empowerment of women in terms of enhancing women's leadership, and we've done a number of initiatives on that and put in place some important sort of policy frameworks to address that. But that goes hand in hand with economic empowerment of women, and you can't look at one without the other. And so we've also had some success and some new partnerships in how to drive greater economic empowerment. Our role is not financial. Our wallet is not UN Women. Our wallet needs to be a little bit bigger. We're only the size of $225 million last year, but that's not, the real issue is how do we catalyze change, real transformative change for women and girls. So we have a normative framework, which is very important. So how do we help the normative framework globally become more robust for the protection of women and girls in terms of violence, but also much more empowering? And then how do we take that normative framework and apply it at the country level through CEDAW, the Convention on the Elimination of all Discrimination Against Women, and make sure that governments meet their international commitments to ensure there's no discriminatory practice in terms of changing laws. And then we also have the power of advocacy. So it's really the normative role, the policy role, the advocacy role, and a final really important role is coordination. When UN Women was created, it was created that every UN agency should strengthen its role in gender. So our role is really to catalyze with the UN resident coordinators, the country team at the country level. How do we help the UN raise its game? How do we help the UN be much more dynamic in these cross-cutting issues? And then globally, how do we hold the UN itself to greater account? So we've also put in place in a very short period of time a system-wide action plan to instill greater accountability in the UN itself. Because the UN has to also walk the talk of gender equality and ensuring that there's an increasing number of women in leadership positions in the UN and also in terms of how we program, how much money, how we really address the impediments that are affecting women and gender inequality, but how do we ensure also that we mark and track the resources that we use as the UN to make sure that we are, again, walking the talk.
One way to mainstream gender issues is, of course, through the now ongoing discussion about the follow-up anti-poverty goals that would replace the Millennium Development Goals. What is your take on that? How can we incorporate women's issues, gender issues in that new framework that we're discussing and that will be developed over the next year or so?
Well, there's an incredible active engagement on this issue, and I think that we need to still as an international community focus on, we still have 3 years left till the end of 2015. We need to make sure that we still marshal our efforts to achieve those goals, and particularly the more difficult goals, particularly around reduction of maternal health. You know, there's still 800 women dying. I mean, many women dying a day in terms of preventable deaths through childbirth. So we really need to focus on ensuring that we achieve those goals. Secondly, we need to take what was good about the MDGs and in terms of being easy to communicate, well understood, engaged societies, and in many countries actually forced government leaders to be more accountable to their people. But then in this next agenda, we really need to address what was missing. I think what was missing was very much more a focus on quality, but I think in particular is taking a rights-based approach. So looking at issues of inequality, of accountability, of inclusion, of non-discrimination, and ensure that in this agenda that those are really front and center. And within that, we feel very strongly it's important to mainstream, but mainstream gender in a way that we really look at really robust indicators. We disaggregate all the indicators and really sort of measurements that will really make a difference in the lives of women, but also have a separate goal on gender equality. That we really focus on the structural impediments, what's really impeding women's progress and threatening women's rights today and in post-2015, ensure we have a really coherent, robust goal to address that. At the same time, making sure we look at all the goals, whatever develops, but make sure that it really is addressing gender in a dynamic manner. And we're really looking at the issues, you know, the goal 3 this round in terms of gender parity in primary is important, but it has to be only just the first step. And we have to have gender equality goals that really kind of affect the whole world as well. That really, what's impeding progress in terms of greater gender equality globally. So it's a very dynamic discussion, and we very much believe that the process is as important as the product, and the process needs to be inclusive, and really look for a transformative agenda, as opposed perhaps more of a technocratic agenda that you sometimes hear.
What could such an agenda look like in the Middle East and in North Africa?
Well, that's an excellent question. For example, in 2010, Tunisia and I believe it was Egypt scored very high on their MDG progress. So I mean, I think that gets to the heart of the dilemma of the MDGs. They scored well in 2010 in terms of the progress, very high in sort of the global scorecard. But that gets to the heart of what the MDGs did not address. They did not address issues of distribution, issues of voice, issues of access, issues of human rights, issues of dignity, issues of inequality. And so I think this agenda is enormously important for the region right now. We're very concerned about a number of countries where there has been a real pushback. Women in many of the societies were at the vanguard and on Tahrir Square and elsewhere. However, what's happened subsequently in terms of whether constitutional development or discriminatory elements of electoral law or lack of implementation and a more fundamental shift is really worrying. So this agenda is directly relevant for Middle East. I just had the privilege to moderate a panel on women's entrepreneurship in the Arab region, and I think one of the conclusions of the panel was, yes, you need to look at things like investment climate and access to microfinance and good policy framework and social protection, but you can't separate that from progressive gender policy. And you cannot you can't compartmentalize women's entrepreneurship from political and broader economic empowerment. So empowerment is absolutely fundamental, and really addressing these issues that led not to, I mean, it's good progress in MDGs, but the issues that really led to the need for change, that this time around we really ensure that those issues are addressed. And I believe this incredible energy and engagement has to be not about doing MDGs plus or a technocratic, has to be about a more transformative change. And I think people are really coalescing around this, because I think inequality is rising everywhere. And these are challenges that I think people are saying that they want their leaders to address and then to be held account for.
Well, we'll keep watching the process here for coming up with those follow-up goals, and we'll keep watching your women. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you very much. It was my pleasure.
And thank you very much for watching. Stay tuned to Devex.